Thank you very much. Look, thanks so much for having us. We're really, really thrilled to be here. Department of Defence. So we're going to talk you through exactly what's happened over the last 6 months in Defence. So just had a beautiful introduction, so thanks very much for that. So we're going to jump right into exactly what the presentations today is about. So number one, Catherine is going to talk to us about the dream. So exactly what she wanted to talk about and exactly what her plan was for social media across the entire Department of Defence. Number two, I'm going to talk about the strategy. So exactly how we did it, how we researched it, and how we came in and made that happen. So I'll talk through that process, and I'm going to show you the exact strategy as well. Number three is the future. So we're actually 6 months on now. So since preparing this social media strategy, we've had 6 months of implementation. We're going to take you through what's worked well, what hasn't worked well, and some of our successes. And finally, we're going to absolutely pitch to you today. We are looking for some amazing social media people. So we're going to try and trick you, convince you to come and work with us.
To sell them to come and work with us.
To sell, indeed.
It's a hard sell.
It'll be a hard sell for sure.
Yeah. We have
All right.
lots of morning teas. Can I talk into this?
Yeah, you can, yeah.
Well, you have this because you're roaming.
Thank you. I'll roam. I'll cruise.
We don't have to go down there. You can just come closer to me. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Catherine. I'm the Director of Defence Media. On the screen here, you'll see a couple of our key social media accounts that we have in Defence. So you'll see the Australian Army Facebook page, the Royal Australian Navy Facebook page, and if Colin clicks over, we'll get to the Air Force and then the Defence Australia accounts as well. Just a bit of background into how the mammoth organisation Defence, how that's sort of structured with communications. Defence has a decentralised model for communications. I've worked in 4 different government agencies around Australia, and I've never worked in an agency quite like Defence, where there's communication teams, as some of you know here, in each of the different groups and each of the different services. And by services, we mean the Army, Navy and Air Force. When I started in this role, in my current role in September 2016, as the next slide might articulate, I had a dream. Now you probably can't see, but you kind of sort of can. We've got these extra cool effects on these slides that Colin has done for us.
All over that caper.
I was quite interested in social media, and when I went around to the different groups and services to their different communications team, I was talking to them about what they did, and I was really keen to find out how they were running their social media teams. And it was really clear to me that there was lots of excellent work, and in fact, do you want to go back a couple of slides, Colin? 1, 2, 1 more? The Australian Army Facebook page is the one that really stood out to me as having an enormous following. I hadn't encountered anything like it before. It has over 355,000 followers on Facebook, and I thought this was pretty outstanding and wanted to figure out what I could do as a Director of Media from the centre of how we can really get some coordination across all of our different channels and accounts across Defence. So I sat down with my Assistant Secretary and said what we need to do, I think, is map out all of our different social media accounts across the organisation, figure out who we're talking to, what are our key messages, and what is our purpose. What is our purpose for having all these different accounts across all these different platforms, and in fact, what is the purpose for our own account that we had, which was just a Twitter account, which, if you want to keep going to one more, this one. So the Defence Australia account that you can see now, the Facebook page, that has really morphed since we've been doing this project. But what was the purpose for that as well? So I convinced my AS that we needed to have a bit of a different approach and work with the private industry, work with this bloke here, to develop a strategy that really encompasses all of this, that's thinking about all these different accounts and how we're talking to our audience and who our audience really is. And this is where Colin came in. So Colin started working on our strategy in about, was it March last year?
Yep, That's correct, yes.
Yeah, so in March last year, and he took like a really long time to get it done. I was on his back every week.
Tough crowd.
It took him about 3 months, and then we had a strategy. So that's a pretty good segue to your part next, I think.
I am going to roam. So I'm going to talk about exactly what we did to write this strategy for defence. So number one, I came in and interviewed about 30 key stakeholders across all of defence. And so spoke to all the areas. And so defence has got about 130,000 people who work for it across the services and defence. So it's quite large. And so that was absolutely the first thing. And the second thing was to map all of these profiles and accounts. And so across all of defence, when we started, there's actually 405 social media profiles across the entire department. So you can see we've got 185 Facebook profiles up there. And so these are the ones that were considered official profiles. If we go into unofficial profiles as well, it's actually closer to 1,000. And these are just organisational. So if we go into personal social media profiles, we're looking in the range of 6,000 to 7,000. So we've got the world's largest Excel spreadsheet mapping out thousands of profiles to show what we are doing and what we aren't doing. And the purpose of this is very much that a lot of people out there really love defence. And so we heard Amanda talking in here previously about people love tanks and they love seeing jets and this kind of stuff. So there's a huge amount of enthusiasts out there who just create Facebook pages and create Instagram accounts. And so there's a whole lot of accounts out there that don't need to be there. And I'll talk more about that shortly, about what we did about that. So here is one example of these profiles. So this actually looks like a pretty good Instagram account. So it's got official images. So Catherine's team manages an amazing team of photographers and videographers and collects phenomenal videos and photos from across the organisation. So these are actually all official images. It's named pretty well, looks pretty good. It actually unfortunately looks better than some of our official profiles. But it's just completely impersonated. So someone who just loves the army and is just right into Defence Force.
That's a koala.
Is there a koala?
Next to the troops?
Could be. See, that's why he's doing so well. He's got rad pics.
Yeah.
He's doing so well.
That's why we're failing.
So look, really good profiles out there. And so, but what do we do about these? So they're using our brand, using our images. And so if they put out a comment and say, here's what Defence thinks about this, journalists do pick it up and think it's official. So it's quite a big problem with the amount of profiles we've got. So the very first step is that we had to look across Defence and say, should we have social media at all? Should any government department have social media? Maybe not. So maybe the answer is no. Or if yes, what exactly should we use it for? And this was the answer. So in very short, this is specifically the purpose or the objectives for why have social media. So number one was to be the voice of defence. It probably sounds really simple, but at the moment there's thousands of voices of defence, and nobody knows who's real, who's not. Internet's a spooky place. Number two is to inform and educate. And all that means is that sometimes there's bad press, sometimes there's good press out there, but we really want to show people what we are doing, what is happening, and showing that taxpayer dollars are being spent really well. Number three is to get public support. So at the moment, sometimes there's a bit of hate out there, and we want to make sure we're looking at that and showing great things that are happening, and also addressing bad news that comes out. And number four and final is we absolutely want to recruit and retain amazing people. So particularly in this area of social media and communications, extremely talented people like yourselves are rare gems, they're diamonds. And so we really want to show it's a great place to work, we want to show it's engaging, encouraging, and we've got good options. So number two is we really need to drill into our audience. And so for the Department of Defence, there's actually quite broad and varied. So we split it into 7 audiences. So number one is the broadest, which is almost impossible to address, which is the general public. But number two really is talent. And this is future people who might work for the Department of Defence. So looking at how we can attract those. We have a number of international alliances and partners we want to work with. Other government departments is absolutely critical. So you heard from the Australian War Memorial, Department of Veterans Affairs, and Defence Force Recruiting or Defence Jobs Australia are some of the other really key groups that we work with. We deal a lot with media and journalists, and so even looking at that list, if we're talking to journalists, is very different than talking to veterans, like past people who have served. So industry and also defence and their families, so staff and their families. So we've got very specific approaches for each and every one of these audiences. I'm just going to jump to the third and final part, which is, and so you will not be able to see all the words here, but these slides are 100% available to you. So I just talked through objectives. Number 2 was target audiences in the blue. And what we did, and so this is our strategy on one slide, pretty much on one page for all the Department of Defence at a high level, and this is something we print out and stick up on the wall. So we mapped which channels, so which social media channels and which digital channels we wanted to talk to each of these audiences in. We absolutely looked at the themes on what we wanted to talk to them about, the specific content types, and then finally, we have to get red hot at measurement and tracking. So if we're putting out posts and content, we want to make sure we're tracking it so we can absolutely improve. And so we're working really hard on that at the moment. All right, let's jump to part 3. So this is about the future. So I'll pass to you, Catherine.
I think I get all the good slides with all the movement.
You do.
Yeah, that's excellent. So where do we want to go? I sort of have got, I talk about in the team 3 key messages for what we want to do as the centre in defence for the organisation, and that is these 3. So the first thing is to have more eyes on our content. You've seen a few of our photos today as part of our presentation, but we have the most enviable library of content, of imagery and photography, and Fleur works in our team who's sitting in the middle there. Hi, Fleur. So we have hundreds and thousands of videos and photos that we share online, and one of the messages I was getting from our digital media team was that we're producing all this great content, all these excellent videos of, in fact, I should just say, whenever Defence has an operation or an exercise, we send a camera team, a military camera team. It's just standard. So we capture some really important historical and really like sexy pictures of capability, doing some really great stuff. And we have so many people that want to see that. So the first thing that we aim to do is to have more eyes on our content, and that's what we're doing with our social media channels. The next thing that we are trying to aim to do, as I alluded to, being in the centre with so many different teams throughout the agency, is to have more connections with each other. And we'll talk about some of the things we're doing with that in a second. And the final thing that we kind of aim to do from the centre is, of course, to reduce risks for the organisation. With the 405 accounts that Colin showed you that we have, I guess you can all, as social media experts, think about like where are these points of risks for things going wrong. So, next slide. Across what we're trying to do, there's 8 projects that we're working on, and these were the 8 recommendations from our social media strategy. And I guess it's also important to say, when we were finalising our strategy, what we did was we got approval from the top. We went to our most senior governance committee in the organisation and got the most senior members of the department to give it a big tick. And these were the projects that they agreed to. The first one is hiring our social media hub. So this is what we are looking to recruit to very shortly. The second is our profile consolidation project. So we've closed about 70, 80 so far?
That's right, yeah, about 85 we've closed so far, that's correct.
The third one is to acquire some really excellent software and tools, and we've pushed really hard to get some programs into defence that Colin will talk about in a moment. The next one is a training program to think about how we can really build our capability in the organisation and what that looks like. Create a social media playbook. So that is a guide, a how-to guide, not just a do's and don'ts, but how to be really awesome at social media. The next one is about resourcing, and this is certainly a pressure point for many in our organisation who are feeling like they have to do so much work in such a small team. As I've mentioned, the connections, so collaboration across defence, and then finally the ongoing management and monitoring and trying to be improving and being, I think, as our Colin's introduction talked about, us being the best in the world at social media.
Indeed.
Oh, this is a good one too.
Fireworks. I think it's optic fibre.
Yeah.
So I would love to take you through a few of the examples and look really open to questions on how we did things, what failures we had, what went well, what went badly, and how we made it happen. So look, there's actually 4 specific examples I'd like to show you exactly what we're working on. So look, number 1 we've mentioned a few times, and some of the smaller agencies in here may not have this problem. If you're in one of the larger groups, you may face this, is that from those 405 profiles, we're looking to get that down to 50 profiles, so 50. And this was a lot of negotiation and a lot of discussion across the organisation, and it will potentially expand a little bit more on top of this. But what this is saying is each of our key services and key areas and each of our key individuals across Defence. And so I'm not sure if any of you are aware of the project going on at McDonald's Australia at the moment. So what they had, I think they had 712 social media profiles just in Australia, so one for every store, like McDonald's Dixon. And so they're just about finished to roll back all of those 700 plus accounts back to one profile, which is McDonald's Australia. And the reason you do that is the vast majority of our profiles might have 50 likes or 100 likes, whereas our Australian Army profile has 355,000. If we merge all the profiles into there, we'll be topping out at about 1 million followers on there if we merge those Facebook pages in as one example. And so Defence, we are not far off being one of the top followed government departments. I'm not sure if anyone from BOM is in here, Bureau of Meteorology. You guys are crushing it. We're coming for you. So I think BOM is absolutely top at the moment. They're doing such a good job. So yeah, and so this is one thing we're doing because we're just not getting the reach and impact from lots of little profiles. That's one of the big reasons we're looking to do that. Very quickly on that point is how do you actually do that? So number 1, we actually just message people on Facebook. We go to their manager. Number 2 is we go direct to Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, and then we actually go to lawyers and say, can you please get this taken down? So we send nasty letters, and we only do this in the case where people are impersonating Defence or taking hits at us and using the brand and that kind of stuff. So it's quite messy work, to be honest, but just needs to be done to clean up that online reputation. All right. The second project I want to run by each of you is that we did not have any software or tools. Can I ask who's using social media management software in their department or agency at the moment? That is awesome. So you're ahead of us. That's really good. So look, we've just got this installed. And I'll tell you exactly what we're doing and how we're doing it. So across all of Defence, we'll be using these 2 products, which is Hootsuite.com, and what this one's specific. Can I ask who's using Hootsuite right now? Fantastic, yeah. So I know there's 2 of the big departments are using it. So it's great to hear lots more of you are doing it. And so we've set up on Hootsuite Enterprise. And so what we're going to do is get all of our official profiles onto here, just so we can manage the approvals, get visibility across the entire organisation of what's happening, and also be able to measure and track and get that transparency of what's happening. Number 2 is a product that works with Hootsuite, and it's called talkwalker.com, and this is probably one of the top few social media listening platforms. And so at the moment, they're claiming that they track 1.3 million sources. So not just your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, but they go and track news sites and blogs and wikis and websites to see comments that are out there. And right now, in using this software, there's roughly about 4 million mentions a day that are relevant to the Department of Defence. There's a whole lot of conversations that are happening that we just weren't aware of, weren't part of, and couldn't engage with or work with. So this is how we're using these 2 platforms at the moment. And we are absolutely looking to get lots more tools. There's probably about another 50. So things like Canva and Pictochart and these kind of graphic design tools. So there's lots of little things we need to make our jobs easier. And just one really practical example for you. So we've got the biggest day of the year coming up soon for the Australian War Memorial and for Defence is Anzac Day on the 25th of April. And if we've got over 1,000 accounts going out and just posting whatever they want, whatever attitude, whatever tone, whatever style, whatever content, it just looks like to our users out there or to our audience, the left hand definitely does not know what the right hand's doing. And so we really need to coordinate this stuff, and you'll see an absolute flurry of content on that day over that probably that 48-hour period. But this kind of thing we just do not coordinate well at the moment, I'd suggest. All right, so you'll absolutely get a copy of these slides. So look, project number 4. So can I ask who's got relatively structured social media training in their organisation at the moment, like a program within? Okay, great. So very, very few. So look, right now at the moment at Defence, we just do not have a structured routine approach to training. And so I'm just going to touch on a couple of the points in here, is that we are right now developing a training program to go across the entire of Defence, starting at just a 15-minute online course for everybody that joins Defence, saying things like don't post nudes.
Or send nudes.
Don't send nudes, yeah, that's right, thank you. And the core one right now for us is actually level 3. So this is a one-day course, and it's targeted at the people who press publish. So I call these the practitioners or content managers. And so right now, this is where the most incidents, accidents, and issues occur across Defence. And so we've got a one-day course, which is quite brutal. So it's actually a simulation, so a simulated crisis scenario where people will be run through an issue, and this is what we deal with a lot at Defence. And so they'll be run through that. It'll be practical exercise of preparing content, working through content approvals, and actually getting stuff live in a very quick turnaround time, working with a team. And we'll also have a test, like a pass-fail test on the back of that. So it's really important. Just like if you were trained to use a weapon, before you're given admin access or access to social media, you need to have the tools and equipment and be ready to go to get it done well. And we're actually going to go right up. So if you can see on the board that we've got a level 5 training, which is for heads of groups. And these are people who are hiring people, setting strategy, approving content. These are people who are making the big decisions. And right through to level 6, which is where we'll be training other social media trainers in Defence. So at the moment, we have people that post in and out of roles every 2 to 3 years. And so we have to have this rolling training schedule. And between Army, Navy, Air Force and the Department of Defence, in some ways it's 4 different organisations, so we need to make sure the training is customised or tailored exactly for them. So we've got to make sure that's spot on. Yeah. So can I pick on the guys at the back who said you've got a training program? Is it similar? Oh, you've got a microphone just behind you if that works. I'd love to hear a bit about that.
So we rely on having social media champions across our agency. So we run a 2-day boot camp for those comms people to learn about that. So we come in and talk about who we are, what our voice is, right through to we have a half day of them learning how to use Shootster, which are one of the sponsors today, but that's a free plug. And how to post, how to manage the content, how to manage responses, how to deal with just about everything across that whole life cycle of a post.
Yeah, fantastic. Look, sounds really good. And I suppose it's quite an interesting question for the group really is, how do you teach everything about social media in one day or in 15 minutes or in a half day? Some of us could argue it should be a 4-year degree, right? So I think it's an emerging area that will professionalise over time. So this is absolutely the approach we're looking to take now. So I'll pass to Catherine on our next project.
I think it was, the thing about being the director of media is you never stop thinking about work ever. And I think it was at the 2nd of January that I sent Colin a message and I said, we should have a social media conference. We should get everyone together across Defence. And so that's what we did. So we invited all of our stakeholders across our communication world in Defence to come together and have a conference to talk about our key pressures and how we're going to solve them. In fact, some people were a bit miffed that they didn't have a chance to sit around and listen and put their feet up all day. But we actually got people to participate and to workshop some of the things that they've been saying to us that they needed a resolution on. How do we fix our resourcing issues? What does a playbook look like? And a few other types of things to do with training as well. So we had about 50 people came along, and we heard from some key speakers as well. But it was just a really good opportunity for the first time to see people who were working in the same space but who have never met each other, which is a very real problem when you work in a big organisation like Defence.
Absolutely.
Next slide. You've got the clicker, I can't click.
Just clicked it all over that.
Thank you. So is this where we start the cell?
For real.
Yeah, okay, cool. So we are looking to bust the mould of office spaces in government and looking to build a really innovative, collaborative, Google-esque kind of space in Defence. And this is absolutely not an artist's impersonation of our office. In fact, it's probably a stolen image from
Google Images.
Yep, thank you. But this is part of our inspo board, and if you want to go to the next slide as well. So these are our other things that we're drawing our inspiration for what does our social media hub look like. For people who are really focused on being excellent communicators, it might be a bit trivial to think about what does the space look like, but it is actually really important to get everyone working together, have a place where people from across the organisation can know to drop in and to get some expert advice, to be able to work from and be really flexible is really what our key goal is for the hub. And it's what we're really looking to recruit to this kind of awesome space.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, look, this concept of a social media hub or somewhat of a central place within Defence, there's 9 specific things that in about 12 months' time we'll be able to put an open offer out to the entirety of Defence and say, this group will do this for you. So number 1 is we've written lots of processes to make it really clear exactly what can and can't be done. Assist with strategy if they need it on these profiles. Number 3 is that training program. Number 4 is we are absolutely transitioning to 24/7 support. So we have a lot of global operations, a lot of international spots that we use. So I'm really looking forward to the graveyard shifts. So content and content coordination. So I mentioned around Anzac Day, when we have that kind of thing, making sure that everybody's saying similar things or making sure we sound like the same organisation. We're going to provide software licenses across the entire organisation so we can all see and use and learn from each other's results and metrics and measurement. Crisis communications are probably a daily thing we do in Defence, so things seem to happen every day for those of you who read the newspaper or watch TV every day or look at social media, which most of you do. Getting these 80 core people across Defence working together. So we have a daily a meeting at 9 a.m. every morning to talk about content for the day across all the key services. We have a working group, we've got a steering group, and we have these social media conferences probably every 6 months. And just finally, and probably one of the main things we do is tech support. So kind of this genius bar of just how to use Facebook and how to get things done on Instagram and that kind of thing.
And reset your password.
And reset your password, yeah, or turn it on and off again. That is correct. Yeah, and so look, this is absolutely our end state vision or our goal for how our central social media hub will work. And the goal is for that to end up being about 15 people. Yeah, so that is absolutely where we're headed. So look, I just want to give just a really quick summary, is that we are absolutely open for you to come and visit, come and see what we're doing. So the new office will be in there probably in the next month or so, next 2 weeks to 4 weeks. We'd really happy to...
The start of the new office, there's no beanbags or grass yet, but that's coming.
I was going to hit up Kmart. Beanbags will come. Yeah, so look, absolutely love to show you through what we're doing. Really happy to help and share anything we're doing or how we've done things. We've made a lot of mistakes along the way and learnt a lot. So, and I speak to quite a few of the departments out there, both internationally and in Australia. So it's been, really interesting. And Catherine will tell you a little bit about the roles we've got as our final statement.
Yes, so we do have, we will be recruiting in the next month, I would suggest, for about 5 positions, well, actually 5 positions. So we're looking to recruit across the EL1, APS 6 and APS 5 levels for various different positions. And look, we thought no better place than this to put a call out to people who are really keen to join our vision and our dream of being the best social media. What did you say in your chat?
In my chatter.
And in your intro, what did you say about you? Best in the world.
Best in the world at social media.
Oh, at social media. Best at social media in the world.
Easy.
Number one. Okay. Thank you very much.
All over that. Thank you.
Just very quickly before we wrap up, any questions from the floor? Yep. How many content producers do you have?
That is a great. So content. So in terms of videographers, photographers, and the people posting as well. Look, probably across defence, probably about 80, we believe. So 80 across all of our accounts. Yeah, a lot.
Up the back.
Hi. With the playbook, like I'm sort of picturing us, like the South China Sea is blockaded and you pull out, the content strategy. Like,
It'd probably be more about Yemen.
like, is it going down to that kind of level, like different postures and that sort of thing?
Look, I love the way you think. Probably two key things. If you haven't already, all of you.
Contingency planning.
Indeed.
Yeah.
All of you in social media, look, US Marines and US Army, it's actually called a handbook, US Marines Handbook for social media. It's all live and online. In my humble opinion, these are the best on the planet right now. So an approach similar to that, so glossy, fancy, motivated, inspiring, encouraging, that kind of thing. So defence does do exactly what you're saying, but more for operations and the defence side of things versus social media.
I think they're called instructions.
Instructions, yes.
Yeah. You find the balance with a large workforce with catering to entertaining your own staff, because obviously staff, like we with QAS, they like following us. How do you find that balance to the public with your content, managing your content? So, you see where I'm coming from?
Absolutely, yeah. Look, to be honest, we're not great at that yet. So some of our content does cater to staff and does cater to veterans or people currently working with us. And we're really trying to transition that and shift that to be outward facing and an external communications channel. Defence is enormous, and so there'll always be a part or a portion of that. And look, to be honest, it's just a really big education piece to say social media is to communicate outward, not inward.
You don't think it's important to balance the both? That's where I'm trying to get my headspace at the moment.
Yeah, look, that balance is critical. And so, for each and every one of those profiles, like if we end up with 50, knowing very deliberately, like our Twitter account across the department, we pretty heavily target journalists and media, right? That's the purpose of that. Whereas if each of you follow the Australian Army, which is our biggest account right now, they focus a lot on Army people and what's happened in Army in the past and the present and the future. So yes, it is about that balance, and we do that per profile actually. Yeah. And
it's that account in particular is very much focused on soldiers and communicating to soldiers and their family, and it's very Army-centric kind of language. And I think that definitely across the organisation, the different accounts, they target their staff and their people a bit more, whereas that's not the focus of our main central accounts at this time.
Final question from the floor from anyone? I'll let you guys go because no doubt. Oh, one more. Yep.
You mentioned measurement a number of times. So what kind of things are you measuring and what kind of things do you value when it comes to measuring and reporting back on investments in social technology?
You should tell about the daily report we do.
Yeah, look, I love that question. And look, I'll answer it as quickly as possible. Look, I think we do about 9 reports a day in terms of measurement. So we do a daily report on everything that's happened for defence in social media. So we've just had the Commonwealth Games, and so we did a huge report on what happened in the Commonwealth Games. In terms of metrics and measurement, to be honest, we're absolutely obsessed with it. So we track likes, followers, engagement, like comments, how many people we block, how many trolls we've got, incidents. So we track a huge amount of stuff. Have about 9 different dashboards we use, and Talkwalker and Hootsuite will be the primary source of that shortly. But look, we have daily reports weekly, monthly. So if you love reporting, yep. you know where to come.
We also, like if we have big announcements in the media, so one of the things that I'm focused on being a director of media and having social media as part of my section is how to integrate media and social media really well. And there's certainly at the most senior level in our department a real keenness to know what our key journalists are saying on social media. So, for example, yesterday you may have seen we had an announcement about who will be the next Chief of the Defence Force. We prepared from the media team a report as to what were the news articles, but within that report we also included what were the key social media posts, what were the outcomes of our own generated content, what was the outcomes of the Prime Minister's content and the Ministers as well, and really trying to demonstrate how that sort of angle was really leading. It's very interesting to our seniors, and I say it's interesting because that's probably where they're at this stage in terms of their evolution of their thinking and maturity, to see how our key journalists are posting on social media and how that's having an effect, and how news is breaking in that sort of sphere. And that's probably our next stage that I'm really keen to look at, and we're often measuring against some key international leaders, like Trump, of course, to see what he's saying and how that's really leading the news, because that's one of the things that are very interesting for our senior leaders.
Thank you very much to Catherine and Colin. And if you sign up today, 10% bonus, is that part of the deal? So if you'd like to link in with those guys for future roles and opportunities, please feel free to do so.